Okay. All right. Welcome everybody to today's public safety meeting for February 18th, 2021. We're going to start with a pledge of allegiance, and Commissioner Kerry has his flag up, so all please rise and we'll say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic to stand one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
God bless America.
Okay, and we'll start with roll call. Carrie Ann?
Hines,
Here.
Stiganga,
Here.
Viero,
Here.
Fagione,
Here.
Sierra,
Here.
Sassy,
Here.
Lujan,
Present.
all present.
Okay, thank you. First up on our agenda, we have representatives. I see Deputy County Executive Harry Porras here with Craig Cherry and Karen Edelman Reyes, County Attorney's Office, as well as our attorney to deal with number one. So I need a motion request to accept and adopt the Orange County Sheriff's Office Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative Advisory Panel Reform and Reinvention Plans. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Stiganga and Sassy. Okay, Craig, are you going to start with that, or the sheriff going to start? How are we going to handle that?
I believe our deputy county executive is going to start.
Great.
Okay, Harry, you're up.
Okay, I was expecting the county executive. He should be here momentarily, but let's move it along. First, I'd like to say good afternoon, everyone. We're here to the final draft of the police reform and reinvention plan. The governor back in 2020 mandated that each police agency in each county form a police reform and reinvention collaborative panel and charged that panel of individuals with the work of reviewing current police department operations with an eye towards improving on how those police services are conducted and delivered. In Orange County government, we have one such agency, the Orange County Sheriff's Office. Steve Newhouse is the Chief Executive Officer of county government, and as directed by the governor's mandate, he was charged with establishing a collaborative panel and appointing members to undertake the work and produce a final report. The county executive solicited help from the entire county, taking in the need to provide a panel that represented the county geographically, ethnically, racially. Equally as important, the panel needed to include experts in important relevant areas and also representatives from various communities. The panel appointed by the county executive includes experts in the areas of police services, social and mental health disciplines, emergency services, human rights advocates, legal aid representatives and other legal experts, community service representatives, advocates for the homeless, the poor, and underprivileged and the helpless. All demographic and racial and ethnic segments of the county were included in the panel composition. On behalf of the county executive, I want to thank all those professionals and community members who volunteered many hours of their time to produce an important document. It was a collaborative work that had many challenges, but I believe the final work is a good piece of business that will be helpful to all throughout the county. I specifically want to thank Craig Cherry, who served on point for this effort, and his office headed by Brendan Casey. And special thanks also to Karen Reyes, who was instrumental in drafting the initial report. And that's it. I'll turn it over to Craig.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to remind everybody, if you're not speaking, please mute yourself. And if you are speaking and have the ability to, please put yourself on camera. If you are speaking, if you don't have the ability to, we obviously understand, but please mute if you're not speaking. So Craig, the floor is yours. And you're muted.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Great.
Yes.
Just to start off, just give you a backdrop of where we came from. The Reform and Reinvention Panel met on several occasions, as indicated on page 4 of this plan under plan meetings. You can take a look at that for your reference. Press releases were released to the media as well as the county Facebook page. Media releases were sent out on 12/4, 1/12, 12/4/2020, 1/12/2021, 1/24/2021, and on 2/8/2021. All right. Public meeting dates were also posted on the Reform Reinvention webpage. This webpage provided information on the reform process as well as survey participation, a police reform email for the public to provide comments. It also provided links to attend meetings as well as transcripts and to view comments made by the public. The final draft in front of you reflects 21 proposals made by the panel. These recommendations include, but not limited to, improving transparency, citizen encounters and accountability, reducing racial bias to build trust, improvements to the citizen complaint process, diversity in the workforce, creation of a chief diversity officer to ensure diversity and inclusion, as well as oversee training for training such as diversity education training, implicit bias. We also tasked a member to act as a community affairs officer to improve outreach to underserved communities, as well as recommendations on training for mental health, overdose calls, to name a few. I will defer to the committee as to how you want to proceed. Do you want to go through the 21 grade areas of the proposal? The grade areas are the areas where we made the recommendations. I'll defer whether you want to just go to each one to ask general questions on each one, or just open it up as you see fit, Legislature Hines, as to how you want to proceed with that. I'll defer to you.
Well, everybody has the document in front of them. I don't think you need to read anything to us. I think that we should allow the sheriff to make a statement, and if Karen has anything to add, and then we'll go to legislators' questions. If they have any specific issues as to why the committee came to their conclusions or recommendations, we can do it then. So why don't we have a word from the sheriff about the process and about his department, and or should I say his office, and then we'll take legislator questions.
All right, just so you know, committee, I was not on the panel for, I think, for good reasons. This is to be an objective review of my office from people from the outside. Obviously, the undersheriff was appointed to, I guess, be a source of information as to what we already had in place through our 5 accreditations. So we were ahead of the curve on this many, many years ago. And I know that a lot of the members of the legislature encouraged us and agreed that we should, be an accredited agency. I'd really like to refrain from making any comments on the process because I was not part of the committee. I did attend the meetings. And if anybody can, comment intimately on what went on in the meetings, it would be my undersheriff. He was on the committee. I don't know, Karen, I don't know if that's proper or not, if you want us making a comments, or if you just want to take comments or questions from the legislature.
Well, I think the process is well laid out in the plan document itself. It also describes the process we went through. Just so you're aware, anything that isn't in gray is a reflection of where the sheriff's office was prior to ever starting the process. And I thought it was very important for us to be able to report out how the sheriff's office was doing before the panel met, and became intimately involved with the operations of the sheriff's office, and then made recommendations as a result of our learning about the sheriff's office, learning about our 911 system and its mental health response aspects, or responses to people with critical needs, and learning about police and citizen encounters as it relates to the sheriff's office. And so what you see not in gray is what we've always been doing. And what you see in gray is suggestions by the panel, or even requirements that the undersheriff has agreed to. So when you see the word shall, that's something that the undersheriff has agreed that he will immediately implement to increase in areas of transparency. I think one thing we learned quite intimately as a whole panel is that the sheriff's office does quite a lot that the public knows nothing about, in terms of building up its workforce, making sure the workforce is properly and maintained, and that they are at all times meeting their accreditations, which includes the New York State Department of Criminal Justice Service accreditation and an additional national accreditation. So I think it might be a good idea to just open it up to questions that the committee may have after reviewing the document.
Okay, thank you. I know all of you know that I was on the committee, and it was very interesting. And anybody who didn't get an opportunity to look at I believe it was our second meeting where the sheriff's office put on an incredible presentation of all the programs that they run and the different people in his office that are responsible for different items. If you read the 203 from the governor, it basically, and I think the undersheriff pointed this out to our committee, that it really describes what we already do because of the CALEA certification that the sheriff's office has. So we already were at that standard. And I also want to applaud Craig Cherry and Karen for their hard work on this. It was a lot of work, and Craig mediated it, and Karen was typing as people were talking and had the document up in front of us while we were still talking about it. So it was always a very good working group in that respect. And I also want to compliment the sheriff's office for their working with our mental health department. That was quite obvious that Darcy and the sheriff's staff work hand in hand on a lot of these issues with respect to mental health and things of that nature. So Craig, I see your hand up, so why don't we start with you, and then I have Legislator Fagione.
I just wanted to, I agree with the sheriff that, that his role would be to just, listen to the information and not provide opinions. That's probably the great idea, Sheriff, that, that just shows that there's a independence of the panel and it's not subject to any offerings or opinions that you have. And thank you for that. But just as Karen has says, that it doesn't do any good to get comments or solicit comments if people do not know what's currently going on within the organization that we're reviewing. And this draft that was originally put out there probably answered a lot of questions before we ever got off the ground. And when people sometimes look at the police reform reinvention collectively as a whole, they tend to just look at it from the wide angle of all national events or local or state events that are going on around the country, when our focus is on the sheriff's office and how do we get them to improve with any of the recommendations from the governor's reform plan. And that's really what the role here is today. This isn't a review of policing in the United States. This is a review of the sheriff's office, where they are now and where they can go for any better improvement in their process.
And I think something else to point out, and I think some of the people that made comments didn't realize it. They thought we were doing this for the County of Orange as a whole, when really we're just doing it for the sheriff's office. Each municipality is taking care of their own agency. And I think some of the comments that we got from the public didn't understand that we are only doing the sheriff's office. We are not setting any policies for the County of Orange other than working with the sheriff's office. Legislator Fagione, you're up.
Chairman, thank you. And I appreciate what you just said. For disclosure, I was lucky enough to be asked to sit on the Town of Deer Park's committee to review the Town of Deer Park Police Department in terms of their practices and whatnot. And I will tell you that this report is comprehensive here on the county level and in terms of the sheriff's office. And I know personally I've taken some of the comments that are here and looked at them in our town as well. So I want to compliment everyone who has worked through this committee process. And it's a great document, and it shows the work and effort. And that being said, I just wanted to make mention that I do sit on that town version of this, and I appreciate the chairman for delineating that. And I would ask that my name be added as a co-sponsor of this as well, Chairman. Thank you.
Sure, we'll do that. Sheriff Du Bois, you're up for a comment?
Yeah, hi. Not just to clarify with the legislature and anybody else listening, is that since 2003, we promised to bring the sheriff's office into the 21st century, which I think we have by our accreditations. We have always been open to constructive criticism to better ourselves. Hence, our monthly appearance at the Public Safety Committee meetings. Basically, I don't know of any other time in history that the sheriff has ever done that. I hope I set a good precedent, and I hope it continues, for time immemorial, because constructive criticism makes us better, and we are open to it. And again, if an idea or a suggestion is given to us, we look at it, we evaluate it. Again, we only want to further ourselves and stay current. But I just want to point that out to everybody, that it's not that we've stayed in the corner or kept a low profile. We've made ourselves available to the legislature and to the public at every meeting, most of the meetings for the last 18 plus years. And I think that this is why, it reflects in our accreditation, and it reflects obviously on our county and our legislature and, all of our elected officials. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. I'm going to take a moment here and let Legislative Counsel Betsy Abraham please just explain to the legislature our role in this process. We don't have the ability to jump in and out and make changes to this document. Our role is to receive the document. So Betsy, are you prepared to comment on that for us?
Sure. So the Executive Order 203, which delineates the plan itself, the Reform and Reinvention Collaborative, basically lays out pretty much in detail the intention behind the reinvention plan, as well as the panel members that need to be appointed to come to the plan that was ultimately made. So basically, the executive order states that the plan has to go before the legislature for either adoption and basically for ratification. There is a specific time frame for the ratification to be made, which is by April 1st. So the executive order doesn't really delineate any specific information as to allowing for changes to be made.
And also, if we don't pass it, the ramifications are financial?
Correct. State funding will be withheld, state and federal.
All right. So I just want to make sure everybody has it's not our role to alter this document. This was a document created by a citizen panel to, work with the sheriff's office and go forward that way. Legislator Bonelli, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a comment, not being on the panel, obviously, I didn't have the knowledge that you had in working with all of this. So when the document was presented to us for review, I was pleasantly surprised as to how it was structured in regard to the shading when Karen mentioned that earlier. It was very, very helpful in reviewing the document. I think it enhanced the document as well because it gave a comprehensive snapshot as to exactly what our sheriff's office has been doing, as well as what their future plans are to address the various issues, and obviously to be in compliance with the executive order. So I was pleasantly surprised, and it made for an easier read than I had anticipated. So I thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That was all Karen. We credit her for that. I can tell
Well,
I can tell you from being a member of the committee, the things that jumped off the page and the sheriff's office agreed right away was to add an online complaint issue. If somebody has an issue with the sheriff or any of his deputies, they could do online filing of any complaint. They detailed the internal affairs department, if you will, and that Captain Cowart runs that up. They detailed the diversity issues. They have a separate person that handles that. And the committee had recommended a civilian diversity position. Whether we end up doing that or not, I guess we'll end up being part of the legislature for financing. But in the meantime, the Human Rights Commissioner and Audi Esposito offered to do training and things like that, even more so than they have been, as well as additional training with mental health, even though they already did that ahead of time. Those were a lot of the things that jumped off the page. And another thing that jumped off the page was when the sheriff was able to hire part-time people to enhance his staff, the percentage of the makeup of minorities was drastically higher when they didn't have to deal with civil service issues. That was a sort of a hindrance to making the staff look like all of Orange County as a whole. And whenever they were able to do that, if you look at the part-time numbers in the report, it's more diverse than the full-time staff. And the committee with Doc from the college talked about maybe advertising a little bit better for what the requirements are to become a deputy and what the education levels are and things of that nature, so that maybe some people, even in the high school explorer type programs, could become interested earlier and focus their education in making that a career choice. Legislator Lujan, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do want to say, I was glad to see that some of these changes, particularly around personnel, were added. But I will say that, as someone who did sit in the public listening to the questions and the back and forth, there were a lot of concerns that were raised, not only by myself, but also by community members. And not all of them aren't entirely the fault of the panel, right? So unfortunately, and here's an interesting moment of me saying the governor did something that unfortunately was not great at all, right? He left it very open-ended. He left it in a way that it was very much open for interpretation about how panels across New York State can be done. And so what it does is that it opens it for, it leaves very, very little direction about what really needs to happen. And then also if a legislator, for example, us, are able to actually kind of address or change or add to those suggestions. And I think that's definitely an unfortunate part of this, because looking at my constituents, right, looking at and a lot of the members who are concerned about how this process is going, the issue that they raised to me were they felt that yes, they did. I noticed that there was diversity on the panel. Absolutely. They definitely that there were some very, very professional individuals in there, many of them with 25, 30 years of experience. That's without a doubt. No one can question that. The concern that a lot of them did raise, though, is that, what happens when those stakeholders are individuals who receive county grants, right? So does the optics of that benefit, is it a possibility that some individuals on that panel might have chosen not to speak out because of those positions or those contracts? And look, part of that reason, part of those bad optics is that we didn't explain very well that there were other conversations that we're having besides the public forum, right? So during the public forum, I talked to many community members who thought that was the only meetings that were going on. And as we well know, there were several other meetings that were happening. And so behind the scenes, I'm sure that many of those individuals who are maybe not speaking were probably saying a lot of really important things to try to move the conversation over. So that's I think the problem with the discussion portion of it. There were a lot of community members that showed dissatisfaction with the fact that a lot of their questions weren't answered. As someone who is listening in on both the city of Newburgh 203, the town of Newburgh 203, the ability to see the questions, to see all of the questions that were being asked by other community members, the ability to interact freely was definitely missing in some ways. And I know that that maybe that's a technology thing. So I'm not it's neither here nor there. But really what it comes down to is what is the substance of what is being asked, right? So this 203 was at its core, it was about racial justice, it was about racial equality. It was in the aftermath of the Black Lives Matter movement. Whether or not everyone understands what the Black Lives Matter movement or what it stands for, that's a completely different conversation. But that's what it was about, right? So we're talking about racial justice and how do we move a system that has historically, unfortunately, not had always the best community relations. How do we move that forward? And some of the things that we talked about was a community advisory board through the sheriff's office. I know that there was a lot of pushback around that. I'm glad we touched on the hiring practices. That's a really great one. Accountability, though, right? So accountability is a big one. So we're talking about either the community advisory panel or we're talking about body cameras. Now, I know that was mentioned, but that was something that, from my understanding, due to funding, we're not going to be able to do. That's very unfortunate. Body cameras was definitely something we wanted to do. I'm glad to see that we're doing training. That's excellent. We need to do training. Anti-racism training would be fantastic. Something that's really, really intentional. But really, I'm concerned when I see that we're not including, the body cameras. I'm also, one of the big pushbacks that I found really interesting was about the IDs. I really thought that was going to be something that people were going to be like, okay, it's pretty low hanging fruit. If you get pulled over at 2:00 in the morning and you have a flashlight put in your face or maybe you don't, maybe it's a great experience. that the officer is going to leave their business card to explain. It's like, hey, listen, you had an issue or you want follow-up information, here's your card. We did that. We're doing that here in the city of Newburgh. A lot of community members really felt that was something that broadened the connection to their officers. I think that's one of those simple things that we could be doing. I think the answer that I got was that because the name that the badge is so big on the uniform that wasn't necessary. It's like that answer is not even connected to what I'm asking for or why it's important. We should be doing that. I mean, this is not a costly change. It's a very easy way for us to connect to the community. I got a few more things, but I want to just open it up in case anybody had any comments on what my statements were.
Sure, I can tell you the committee addressed all that stuff with respect to body cameras. The sheriff's office position was that they're 100% in favor of it. They have cameras throughout the jail that have saved us a fortune with respect to civil litigation. So they were all for it. But the problem is you have to store the footage for 3 years. And that's where the cost they felt would be a bit cumbersome. If we can get grant money for that, that would be wonderful, and they would be happy to do it. With respect to the back and forth comments, we didn't answer questions other than Deputy Commissioner Cherry did answer some questions in a chat session because it was a public hearing, much like the legislature has a public hearing. We don't answer the questions. We hear from the people, and that's what this process was really designed to do, is hear from the people more or less than have a back and forth type of discussion. And with respect to the IDs, the only ones who have business cards are members of the command staff and the investigators. The actual deputies don't carry cards with them. But I think every one of you knows how easy it is to determine what deputy you're dealing with because they have the numbers right on their uniforms and on their jackets, and they're prominently displayed, those 3-digit numbers. And we thought that was pretty easy. And we also pointed out that we have AVLs in all the vehicles, and the radios are all ID'd. So if you're pulled over or have an encounter with a deputy, the sheriff's office can exactly tell in real time exactly who you were dealing with, or if there was more than one, who was there and who saw what. So we felt that if someone hit that complaint line, the sheriff's office would be, in a matter of seconds, be able to find out who the individual was that you were dealing with. So we didn't really want to be in the business of printing, 100 different people packets of business cards to hand out. And then they thought, when would you hand it out? Would you hand it at every encounter? And that's the problem with the body cameras too. We didn't know what footage should be saved, because what a deputy considers a non-encounter and what a citizen considers an encounter could be two different things, and vice versa. So you have to save all the footage, because otherwise, if you don't have it, it can be used against you, I think is what the attorney had pointed out. So those were discussed, but that's where they were left out. Mr. Paduk, the floor is yours. As usual, you're muted.
Do that every time. I just wanted to back up Legislator Lujan. I had a discussion with the mayor of the city of Middletown in regards to some of these issues. And what I'd like to say is, first, I like a lot of the things that were brought out in the gray portion. I wish I could have brought it up, but I'm having trouble with my internet to exquisitely identify each one. But there was a lot of great things added to it. The one concern that I had is in regards to the identification. The city of Middletown does have ID cards that they hand out at every stop. And in regards to Middletown as well, since I represent them, also invested $150,000 a year for a 10-year touch program in regards to body cameras. So, I mean, it's really, in my opinion, how we want to invest, or what we really need to invest to ensure that we're doing the best job we can. Look, I'll compliment the sheriff and his office on a lot of the great things that are included in here. But those little things that are missing, look, those people that get your card could also submit not a complaint, but gee, your officer was great, and I really respect you for giving us his card, that kind of issue. So, I mean, it's really up to us. It's not a really expensive way to go. And in fact, the city of Middletown invested their own money. There was no grant money in regards to them achieving body cameras for 70 of their officers, all 70 of their officers. So I just wanted to mention that and just compliment on how great a document this has turned out to be, but just has a few things I think are missing. So thank you, sir.
So we talked about the cost, and I think the sheriff and the undersheriff agreed to look into it to get back to us. But the storage for 3 years, a lot of the agencies are not doing that. And I think that was the hangup. If we were going to do it, we had to do it right. And that was going to be on the recommendation, I think, of Karen had recommended that if you're going to record things, you better record everything and you better store everything. Because if then something comes up and you don't have it, they're going to say you got rid of it or you intentionally didn't do it, and then it's used against you. So we were worried about that a little bit, I think. But listen, just because I make a suggestion, the sheriff's office is open to suggestions from this committee
Yes,
or any
I know.
legislator at any time. Anybody can pick up the phone and call the sheriff. I've done it many times. So it doesn't have to be in this report. If you see something and you want business cards, you recommend to the sheriff that they do it. I'm sure they would think about it. And, if we're willing to pay for it, maybe they would do it, maybe they won't. But, the sheriff's an elected position. He doesn't have to do what we tell him to do, that's for sure.
Right.
But that's a discussion that the sheriff, his office can have if they want.
Should I just follow up and suggest that maybe, I think Middletown is included with the storage app. I would ask that maybe someone talk to the mayor or the city of Middletown to see if that's all included in that $150,000 for a 10-year period. I think it'd be interesting to find out.
Yeah, and I'm sure they'll look into it. Legislator Stiganga, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess the biggest thing that I am trying to get some answers to, I got a lot of calls from some of my constituents concerning the fact that the investigation part of a complaint is through the same department. And I know coming from a corrections background, we had IG, which I mean, if you were a correction officer, if you saw IG coming, you ran the other direction because you knew that they were just out to get you in that sense. Can one of them, the sheriff or Craig or Karen or any of them, please explain the group that would be investigating any complaints to show that that's an independent group, even though it may still be listed under the sheriff's office? I tried to explain to my constituents that, although it's still listed under that title of the sheriff's office, they are an independent group that really looks at right and wrong and investigates and does what they're supposed to do, and that there's not any appearances of impropriety or that they're going to look the other way if somebody is doing something that's wrong and the complaints are filed. And looking through this report, I mean, I have to give the sheriff lots of kudos. In the last 3 or 4 years, they've only had 13 complaints, and some were unfounded, some were unsubstantiated, but some were founded. So it shows that when they do get a complaint, that they are not sweeping anything under the rug, that they are actually addressing it. They're making sure that if it is something that an officer did wrong or a sheriff did wrong, that they are addressing it. They are, fixing the problem. So I have to give them lots of credit on that. And the other issues on the whole plan where I really felt were really good. They addressed a lot of things and they added things that I think are really going to bring the plan out so it's a little bit more transparent for the public in general. Thank you.
I can speak if you like.
I think with every large agency, you're going to see internal affairs, the New York City Police, the state police, and the sheriff's office. Internal affairs is an in-house organization. And Sheriff, you wanted to just explain Captain Coward and his operation? I think that might be helpful.
Yeah, let me just do something for Legislator Paduch, please. We are in favor of body cams, and not only the cost for the body cams, which are not that expensive, but it like Kevin Hines, Legislator Hines said, it is the storage that would be astronomical. But again, that would be a legislative decision. Let's see, personnel. Yeah, there would have to be probably, we probably have to hire somebody also to keep all of this straight. And I believe the other issue, which, we'd have to comply with, obviously, is discovery. When the state legislature passed their new discovery rules a couple of years ago, discovery for the defense, has to be, Karen please correct me if I'm wrong, is like 15 days. So there's quite a bit of maintenance also that would come with the body cams. And like I say, I'm just giving you the issues. You're the ones that are going to have to fund it. But, you know, we're in favor of it, but it has to be done right. And we want to be in compliance with the district attorney and obviously, you know, the rules of evidence. So as far as internal investigations, I'd like to defer to Karen Reyes on that with Captain Coward, and how it is not uncommon for a large police agency, and I'm not really sure of any other police agency that has an outside agency do their complaints, but I'd like that to Karen Edelman Reyes to comment on that.
Yeah, so the sheriff's office is very usual in that they have their own internal investigating body. What we learned as sitting on the panel and from doing research and reporting it back to you in the plan document is that the sheriff's office has set themselves up in a way that they have a captain in charge of all of the internal investigations. It's Captain Coward. He's a very experienced police officer. Has decades of experience from what we learned, and he only answers to the undersheriff and to the sheriff. And so he is thus outside of a chain of command. He doesn't have to answer to anyone else. He only focuses his efforts on ensuring the integrity of the personnel that he's trying to ensure are following the rules. What we also learned, besides having a very robust internal investigating staff that includes, I think, at least 3 other dedicated people under Captain Coward, there are also available other avenues for complaining about any police officer's conduct in any municipality. So a citizen can complain to the Orange County District Attorney's Office. A citizen can complain to the New York State Police. They can go to the Attorney General's office. So there are other avenues outside of the sheriff's office where a citizen can go and seek relief or redress for what their encounter may have been. When the sheriff was explaining, or Kevin Hines was explaining about how you identify a police officer and the issue about business cards, I kept thinking that in my experience, when the state police has been called in to investigate another municipality's office, they are incredibly quick at finding out the who, what, where, and when. They are never precluded from that information. It's never a mystery who the person was, meaning the officer who was involved in any incident. That is incredibly easy to trace and track because all of the cars have the automatic vehicle locator. The radios are, as you all know, very high technology, well upgraded, easily traced and tracked and found. If there is a concern from the constituents, very understandable. My only experience personally in my professional life is with the Civilian Complaint Review Board in the New York City, who was an investigating body, an independent investigating body for the New York City Police Department. And even they, in their own independent investigatory powers, only had the power to recommend discipline. And so they would conduct an investigation, but then recommend discipline back to the same agency. And so, having at least 3 other avenues that are stateside, that never mind that you could go to the U.S. Attorney's Office if you felt as though a police officer was acting unconstitutionally. So there are other avenues where citizens can go to complain about the behaviors, conduct, unconstitutionality of a police officer's at their own entity, even if they have an internal investigating body.
Okay, thank you. Legislator Lujan, I see you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to reiterate that it would be unmistakable for us to not, mention the accreditations to the sheriff's office and the immense collaborations that they do with all the different organizations across Orange County and beyond. I think there's no question there, right? We all recognize that, and it was definitely something that was mentioned, multiple times throughout this panel. And one of the things I do have to say though is I think that for community members that were looking at these forums and these public hearings, they were expecting that perhaps 10% or 15% of the time would be focused on, okay, this is what we do and this is what we do right. And that's great. We should be patting ourselves on the back on some of these things. I mean, if we're doing things right and we're doing it better than other communities, it's good for us to be sharing that. And, I understand that it was recognized that perhaps we could do a better job at explaining and showing what we're already doing. I get that. I think that it's important, though, for us not to get away from and what the original goal was, is to focus on racial justice, racial equality. And I think that was kind of one of the things that a lot of community members, when they pushed back, they were concerned about, even some of the members that were on the panel itself, because of certain ties. And so some of those questions were asked and some of those questions were raised. So I just want to say, look, I understand that, I applaud the efforts that have been done. And I think that there was definitely some great work done on the issue of the cards. I think this is a really easy, basic thing that we could be doing. I think that, sure, yes, fine. It might be easy to track it down. But if this thing happened a week ago and it was let's say hypothetically it was a traumatic experience for that civilian, maybe they're not going to remember the exact date. So having that card would be a way for them to be able to remember the person's name. I just think that we're oversimplifying, the different situations where an individual might want to have a card, might want to have that business card. And so I wish really push back that I think that this is something that's very simple for us to be able to do. The complaint process as well. Going back to that, honestly, one of the things that I always have concern about that is, like, if police are policing themselves, right? So the optics of that, in and of itself, doesn't look great. But you know what? I mean, I think that I can understand why community members would feel a certain kind of way about that. But the big one for me, and I want to just kind of talk about that as well, is the diversity officer. I've talked about the need of a diversity officer in Orange County for a good number of time. So it would be great if we did a diversity officer. I would really do hope that if we did do that, that it would be someone that would be on focus countywide and not just for the sheriff's office, because we definitely need someone to reevaluate where we could be doing better work. I think that we highlighted some avenues, right? I think that the sheriff's office, working with Steve Gross, they recognize some really great ways to diversify their personnel. I applaud you on that. Honestly, I really do. I think that was really great that we were able to do that. I think that if I look at other offices and departments, that's been an issue, right? So what can we be doing? So that's a great starting point, but what are we doing to be intentional about going to the places where people are and making sure that we're diversifying hires, making sure also that individuals who are up for promotions, that they're not being passed over, even though, and unfortunately, those are some stories that some of us as legislators hear from different members of different offices, not necessarily in the sheriff's office, but in other positions. And so, look, I think a diversity officer would be one of the biggest things that we could be doing to kind of make sure that it's impartial and we're dissecting all of our offices and departments. So I would be very in favor of creating a position that would work in hand with all the departments and particularly with the sheriff's office. So I definitely would love that idea. And as far as the data, look, this is an important issue. If we can get body cameras and we have to fund for data collection, let's do it, because that goes back to the piece about accountability. This whole 203 was all about transparency and accountability. And look, we're trying to do that, but that's a big piece that we'd be missing. So, I just want to push back that these are some of the things that when I go back to my community members and they say, well, what happened in that 203? Well, these are the big ones that they're going to mention back. Like, why are we not doing these things? So thank you.
Yeah, and the committee did recommend a diversity officer, at least like a civilian type of position. And we talked to Commissioner Gross about that, and his department already does that for the sheriff's office as through the civil service process. He explained that in detail. The Human Rights Commissioner, Nardi Esposito, mentioned that she's involved in some of those things, and they're going to do some training. And with respect to transparency, if you look at the last page of the report, you'll see some of the comments from the public that they put it right in the report, whether they were founded or unfounded statements or suggestions, they're right in there. So nobody was hiding anything. And actually, the sheriff's office was very accepting of any of these suggestions. Commissioner Cherry, you're up. You're muted, Craig.
I'll get that one sooner or later, right? I'll figure it out. Regards to body cams, just a quick comment on that. as the government, federal government, state government pushes that issue, I think you're going to see more federal funding or state funding become available for that. I mean, if this is something that has been recommended by 21st Century Policing and all these other reform initiatives, and I think you're going to see a lot of pressure for the federal government and state governments to provide funding for that going forward. The chapter's not closed on that by no means in regards to where funding. I do empathize with people with the virtual meeting challenges. Part of my homework, I probably watched about 40 different reform virtual meetings around the state. I think I blinded myself. They all have challenges. They all have those same issues of the technical issues of being on, not being able to hear, limited participation. It's been a comment statewide and very difficult when we're trying to deal with all the COVID restrictions. We even had a couple of members of the panel that did not want to be involved with in-person meetings. So, virtual was the only way we could go. And just to comment also on that, I actually think more people got an opportunity to make comment in that setting, even though they might not be able to get right on that meeting live. They were able to post questions in that we replied to. We were able to inject more comments. If it was old school, we would in 2019 we would have had a couple of meetings probably at the government center or the auditorium, and only a handful of people probably would have been made it. They had transportation issues. So I think all in all we're still able to get the public had more opportunity than they would at a non-traditional or traditional public forum. The email was open for some time, so anyone was always free to make an email. So I think we did the best under the circumstances we could do in that regard. Not perfect by any means. You can always do better, but I think we worked the best we could with what we had. And I don't think this is the last chapter in police reform. I think you're going to see the governor's office take all these 500 different reforms that they're going to receive over the next year. They're going to go through them, and you're probably going to see another chapter, another requirement on addressing some of these reforms to improve on them. So the chapter's not closed by any means.
And one other thing I wanted to point out, we did put out a survey, and through that Survey Monkey, and there were very little, if any, complaints with respect to racism against the sheriff's office. Actually, I don't think if there were one or two, it was significant. Most of the complaints that came through were with respect to policing and mental health that I saw, as I recall. Karen, do you have anything to add to that part of it?
And it seemed like, just like Legislator Lujan was discussing before, that EO 203 seemed to need to spark a conversation about policing in America, but the executive order itself was just talking about the sheriff's office. So in our analysis of the sheriff's office, we would often get comments or questions from the community that were really very much a question about policing in America today, when the panel focus on the sheriff's office and what is the sheriff's office doing, even though those comments and questions were incredibly relevant. And that they were also things that the panel members were very interested in, but our mandate was specifically laid out in the guidance that came with the executive order, which was 139 pages of a how-to book on how to go about having these discussions without getting lost. And so the governor's office issued that, and that's why the document that you have as your plan document specifically tracks the governor's outline of what we were supposed to find out about our own police office. We were supposed to find out, what are we doing now? And then talk about the things that we're not doing. And the governor gave us examples of things that we could be doing better: violence reductions for teens, mental health services for everyone, conjunction responses between mental health people and the sheriff's office. All of these things we had to speak about in an open forum. We had to discuss them. We had to formulate decisions about whether or not we're doing that. It was almost sort of like, okay, check, we're doing that, great, let's move on. And so sometimes the panel discussions did turn into, this is what we're doing, this is what we're doing, okay, we're doing this, and yes, we are accredited. And sometimes it must have felt like, if you were spectating, we were patting ourselves on the back. But really what we were doing was we were doing what the governor told us to do in his 139-page edict, which was, you have to discuss each and every one of these issues. You have to lay out not you're doing it, how you're doing it, if you're doing it well, and then you have to say, okay, now we want to see this done better. And I think that's what you have in front of you, is that plan document did all of that. And those panel discussions broke up every subject that's in your plan document into 3 sections. So we started with, hey, what are we doing? Who are we? How do we train our people? How do we support our people? How do we hire our people? And then it went to, okay, so how do our people interact in non-criminal situations? What are they doing in the community? How are they interacting with mental health crises? How are they interacting with mental health service providers? How are they interacting just inside of the community when nothing criminal is going on or nothing suspicious is going on? And then the third meeting was, okay, what are we doing in these citizen encounters? How are we dealing appropriately as police officers when we are encountering a citizen in a suspected crime situation, in a suspected vehicle and traffic stop, things like that? And so it was a build on all the things that we were supposed to be discussing and deciding what needed to be changed, implemented, done differently, done better, all with a nod toward the idea that the sheriff's office, for the great bulk of the discussion, is actually doing all of the things that the governor wants them to do. And that's likely because they are accredited by the Division of Criminal Justice Services, which is the state's accrediting agency. So it makes sense that the sheriff's office is doing what the state would like them to do, because they are accredited by the state and they do abide by those standards and they do have those programs in place and the things that Policing in America Today should have in place to ensure that our sheriff's office is never that police office that is involved in the horrific things that we can see on the news at times. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to build the best possible scenarios, because there will be police-citizen encounters. We just want our people to be as equipped and knowledgeable and appropriate as possible.
Thank you for that. So Sheriff, your homework's going to be looking into cards and cameras and costs, and if you want to do it, I'm not asking for an answer now, but it's something that I think you should think about and decide and get back to us what your decision may be on either one of those issues with the research of costs and things of that nature. And I assume you might be part of collective bargaining too. I know the cameras are, but I assume the cards might be also, so I leave that to you and the lawyers. Legislator Lujan, you're up.
Yeah, no, again, I fully agree with what was said a moment ago. You know, there was also a sharp disconnect between, you know, what community members were expecting or what they would like to see, or even the misunderstanding between, you know, what we do as a county versus what local municipalities do. And I think that was, you know, when something gets lost in translation like that, community members that are obviously very frustrated, that are seeing what's going on across the country, and to your point that, you know, those kinds of things should never be happening anywhere, right? So we definitely don't want them to be happening in our own backyard. And so I think that the concern, and again, I mentioned this based on, you know, my constituents who raised this concern multiple times, and you said it, you know, the perception that it was that the opportunity was taken as the patting on the back, right? So, you know, the big issue is that, like, that a lot of this should have been focused on the solutions that what could we be doing differently. When I look at this document, I do see those changes. I do see a lot of different, some really great work. I do see places where we saw room for growth. But then there's these big ones, right? The ones where we discuss, even like in the town of Newburgh or the city of Newburgh, where, you know, we're immensely cash strapped, but we're still pushing to put things like body cameras. Like this isn't something we discussed as a maybe. Like we are doing it, even knowing that it's costly. The cards, same thing. We're not talking about it as a maybe possibility. This is part of our plan, and we are immensely cash strapped. So I just want to say, for those two in particular, this shouldn't even really be a conversation of cost. Like, we should be investing in the transparent accountability piece with these two things. I mean, that's kind of where I could go with everything else, but I draw the line in the sand on those two things. Like, those things should have been in there. So that's where I stand on that particular issue. Thank you.
Okay, I think we talked about this. I don't see any more hands up, so I would like to conclude this portion by thanking Karen and Craig. I know they worked like
Kevin.
crazy on that. And as well as all the people that served on the committee that were selected by the county executive.
We had a lot of good people.
Joel Sierra has his hand raised.
I'm sorry, Legislator Sierra, the floor is yours.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit of network issues over here. I got a chance to, one, I just wanted to thank the chairman. Thank you for letting me speak. Two, I wanted to thank the sheriff and the professional department that he runs. I know we have some of the most accreditations in any department around. I got a chance to sit in on the meetings that Middletown held. I know the DA he attended at least one meeting, and I'm okay with this document as long as this document is fluid. It's going to be ever changing. I don't think there's going to be a perfect document out there. I do agree with all the comments that were made today. You know, wherever you stand on the issues, I believe that body cams are the future of policing. And it's nice to see that the sheriff and his office aren't against the body cams. I understand that no one likes change. Just like I remember a few years ago when the vehicle cams were a big thing and they were talked about and they were just coming into policing, and, you know, there was some pushback then. But I mean, I'm not sure where we hold the footage for the vehicle cams. I'm in favor of the body cams, and if we have to allocate some funds to handle the storage, I would be in favor of that. So I'm a yes vote on that. I understand that this is the picking of the panel was the county executive's job. I understand he runs our he's the CEO of the county. Could have we done a different job picking different people on the panel? I think he did his best. I know many of us volunteered to be on the panel. That was one of the questions my constituents asked. If we could have made the panel more diverse. I don't think this is the last time we have these type of meetings, so I'm hoping that, you know, he sees the need in the future. And the times of the meetings. I know some of my constituents commute and they were having an issue attending or seeing the meetings. But again, no one has all the answers. There's not going to be a perfect meeting out there. There won't be a perfect panel, and I don't think there'll be a perfect document. This is all you know, new. The issues aren't new, but, you know, trying to change the issues and what the governor is implementing is fairly new. I know there's going to be some resistance there, but again, I don't think this is the last time we visit this. And I'm hoping that there'll be more meetings to come and that we can implement some of these policies. And again, Sheriff, I think you're doing a great job. I know personally some officers in your department that are minorities that have been promoted. I agree with Mr. Lujan, but, you know, and I don't think he was specifying your department in general, but, you know, if there's any question, I know personally, even before I became a legislator, that, you know, it's very diverse in your command staff and the officers that receive promotions in your department. So I can personally vouch for that. I know I have a few friends that have been promoted in your department. And again, I commend you on the job you're doing. Thank you for keeping an open mind with this whole policy. And I hope we continue this in the future. That's all I have. Thank you.
Yeah, and those are good comments. And this committee can always make suggestions to the sheriff's office, as any legislator can. With respect to public comment, we did have a night meeting at 6 p.m. where people could comment from the public. We had another one at 4 o'clock where people could comment from the public. So we did try to be all inclusive. I think I saw the county executive raise his hand. Is he on?
Hey, Kev, how are you? So I'll be brief, Mr. Chairman. And first, I want to thank Craig Cherry and the whole team who put this together. They did a great job. We had a very diverse, and I thought everybody was covered in the group. If you have people that were invited that agreed to be on, we didn't just say, hey, Bob or Jane, you want to be on this? And if they said that they were not going to be engaged, they weren't selected. So we didn't have maximum overdrive participation from some of the people that should have been on, that are on this group, that didn't make meetings. And I'm not going to say shame on you, shame on them, but you know what? The people that were selected represent key aspects of our community, and some of them didn't make any meetings. And unfortunately, that's just the way it goes in any type of committee. But I will tell you, I am proud of the sheriff's office. I watched not only Kenny Jones or Otis, the people that are senior guys that have experience, but young men and young women answer very complicated questions from the public. So I think this is a great document. And like I think Joel and I think other people have said, this is a living document, just like if you had a city or town or village planning document, those are meant to give you a guideline for going forward. I look forward to continuing to sharpen our spear. Kevin Hines and I have been friends for over 25 years. He's in the fire service. I'm in the military. We're always doing things to improve on how we do operations. So I thought it was great. Craig, you did a great job. I have a tremendous respect for you. I think you're a great leader in our community. I think everybody that was part of this team did a wonderful job. Again, this is a living, breathing document. And what we're going to take from this, whether it's body cams or some of the other recommendations, we're going to continue to provide the most honest and transparent service to the public. So that's all I got to say to you, Mr. Chairman. And I just wanted to make sure I threw that out there.
Thank you. Sheriff, you want a final comment?
Last comment. Yes, thank you very much. I want to just hit a couple points real quick and confirm to the legislature, and as the county executive said, we consider this a living document. It is subject to change. It is subject to suggestion and review, and we're fine with that. We encourage that, as I said before, because it only makes us better. The second thing that a lot of you probably don't know and maybe never thought of, I know we talked about, Karen spoke about things that are happening around the country. You know, we take those videos and we also use them as training aids as what not to do. I'm very, very strict about that. And if I see something, whether it be on social media, whether it be on the news, whether it be something that we can use for training, I send it to our training officer, Captain Purcell. And I know all the other command staff and any person that thinks that we could use that as a training tool, you're more than welcome to forward it to us. Executive Order 203 has its model in the Division of Criminal Justice Services accreditation. Okay, just so everybody knows, you haven't all been around here as long as I have. Some of you, some longer than me, but we've had that accreditation since 2004. And that accreditation, those standards, that's a living document also, okay? That's a living document, and standards change as we move through different trends and, different, through the years. The last thing I'm going to say is that there are two constants in law enforcement. You can probably find this in other vocations too, but the two constants are change and training to keep up with that change. And we remain committed to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for your comments. Carrie Ann, I'm going to do a roll call on this, please.
Good night.
Stiganga?
Yes.
Bureau?
Yes, absolutely.
Fagion?
Proudly, yes.
Sierra?
Aye.
Sassy?
Yes.
Lujan?
No.
Hines?
Yes. Does everybody want to be a sponsor on this? I know Legislator Lujan probably doesn't. Does everybody want to be a sponsor or no? John Vero said yes. I'm a yes. Kathy and Rob were the original sponsors. Joel, you want to be on it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So that'll be done that way then. Now we'll move on to item number 2, and that is going to be the corrections report. I need a motion to discuss the corrections report, please.
So moved, Stiganga.
Second,
Is there a
Luhan.
second? Okay, thank you. Sorry, Colonel, are you with us?
No, Captain Catlett is with you guys today.
Okay, Captain, the floor is yours.
All right. We started our head count today at 400. Our ICE population 79. Our Marshal population 79. Our revenue through January 21, 657,121.
Okay, looks like our revenue is going to be way off based on those numbers. I had been receiving a bunch of emails from people and phone calls, almost to the level of harassment, because they call on my private phone as well, from people telling me that there's ICE prisoners with COVID in the Orange County Jail, and that we took 33 people from New Jersey, and that we take unlimited transfers from New Jersey when the people get sick. Can you please comment on that and clarify it first, please?
As far as that, I'm not aware of any of that. We have had COVID positive inmates. As far as unlimited transfers, they're all medically screened and they're tested upon admittance to our facility. They're screened also prior to coming to our facility. So that information is not correct.
And how many ICE prisoners have COVID at this time? Do you know? If
Zero.
you can answer that.
0 at this
Okay.
time.
Right. And if they do have, you have ways of isolating them. Can you explain that to everybody, please?
Yes, we have negative pressure cells that we utilize in our medical unit and it's used for ICE, marshals, or our inmates. Anybody that's found to be be symptomatic of COVID and test positive for COVID are placed in those cells in medical isolation and checked on by medical until this passes. And then they'll
Okay, thank you. Under Sheriff Jones, I see you have a comment.
Yeah, in preparation for this meeting, I asked Colonel Mealy to give me statistics related to these phone calls, which is a group of people that are motivated, A, to eliminate any ICE contracts with any local facility. Since the start of the COVID epidemic, 2 ICE detainees have been positive arriving at our facility, but they did not come from a different ICE facility. They came from street arrests, and in our records show that they came from Barrack Street, which is the facility in Manhattan. So, and they were, as Captain Catletti said, they were isolated upon entry and put in a negative air pressure cell. As we do with all incoming. And just to make it clear again, the allegations on these phone calls is every ICE prisoner, like any other prisoner, is tested when they come in. And in the case of an ICE prisoner, they're tested when they leave to go to another facility. Before they leave, they have to be tested. And so there's a lot of misinformation on these phone calls, and they claim they get it from ICE data. I'm not sure where they're getting it from, and they've been unable to, because I've gotten some of the same phone calls. They've been unable to give me the website that they obtain their information from.
Okay, thank you. Now I have a question for Captain Catletti on page 2 of your report. I don't know if you have the report in front of you.
Yep.
Okay, under state reportable incidents, which is page 2, number 2, it says physical injury to the hospital. That seemed like a high number to me. Was there something that went on that you can talk about, or maybe you don't allow to?
No, it's a physical injury and or a hospital run. That includes anybody that, complained of chest pains and we sent out and things like that. There's no significant incident that it's.
Because when it said physical injury, that led me to believe that there was some sort of a physical altercation as opposed to an illness.
No, that's just the way the categories group.
And then there was another one that said reportable incident, released from custody. What would make that a reportable incident on that same section?
Because if an inmate is at a hospital, if they're admitted to the hospital, we report them. And if they're released from custody while still admitted to the hospital, we have to report that as well. So they would be released from custody while they're still admitted to the hospital.
All right. I just was confused why that would be reportable. Thank you. Anybody else have questions for the captain? All right. Legislator Sierra. You're muted.
All right, sorry about that. I'm not sure who can answer it, if it's the sheriff, undersheriff, or the captain, but I know the sheriff's office and corrections provides, drug treatment, alcohol treatment in the prison system. Is that still the case? Has COVID affected that at all? Addiction
So
services?
any of our programs that we currently had in place are still in effect.
Okay, so nothing's changed with those addiction services.
No.
All righty, thank you.
And you have mental health staff in the jail too, right?
Correct.
That was my understanding. I just wanted to clarify.
Sure. Any other questions on the corrections report? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to move on to the sheriff's report. Letter C, motion to, well, I don't know why it's letter C because it's after A, but that's what it says on my sheet. So the sheriff's report, motion to discuss, please.
So moved, Tom Faggio.
All right, and I got Mr. Vero as a second. Sheriff or undersheriff, you want to highlight the sheriff's report, please?
Well, it's the first month of the year, January, so it was an average month as far as activity goes. You will notice on page 6 that there's substantial new pistol applications received, 286. We are booked now through August. We're giving August dates as we speak, and we expect to exceed 3,000 applications for the first time ever in the history of the sheriff's office in a single year.
Has anything moved forward with the range with respect to the federal agreement, or is that shut down for the weather with respect to construction?
We're anticipating a meeting with the county executive's office, DPW, and law in order to expedite some of the things related to the construction of the building and the second range. We just recently received information from DEC that allows movement of one of the piles that was blocking the construction of the second range. So that matter has been rectified, and we anticipate some sort of meeting to make sure that everything is ironed out this year to go for building our structure and getting it completed, because the federal money is available, and it's more than $1 million, and it would be god awful shame to lose access to that kind of funding because of bureaucracy that is slowing down the process.
Yeah, that was my concern as well. Okay, does anybody have any questions for the sheriff's office with respect to the sheriff's report? All right, seeing none then, I guess we motion to adjourn is in order. The desk is clear. Is there a motion to adjourn, please? Mr. Vero makes the motion to adjourn.
Second.
Lujan seconds it. All right, thank you very much, everybody. Have a great day.
Okay, Chairman, take care.
Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.